Okay, now we're about 100 feet from where we were to another area or part of the pond, and now we see again these long gracile digits of probably swimming pelycosaurs. And all of these slabs have broken off from the layer that you can see behind us. And yet up here we get probably a different type of imprint, and these may represent amphibians, and so you can kind of see the difference. I mean, if you had long gracile claws as opposed to short stubby ones, the kind of traces you're going to leave even on the bottom of the pond.
So we can definitely see the difference between an amphibian and a reptile just by looking at it.
It's more tricky in this type of material than it is obviously when we've got them walking on the surface.
Okay.
But that's our best guess.
We're here at a place that's called Beetle Hill, and we're looking at something that's virtually unique on the monument. If you go through the monument and you look at all the red layers of rock that have the tracks and the trails on them, you never find burrows, tunnels that were dug into the rock or into the sediment before it became rock. So what you don't see generally is evidence of animals, and this would be insects, arthropods, that were living in the sediment. And normally what you see in river settings or floodplain settings is you see a certain amount of animals that would burrow into the sediment looking for food. They're literally mining the sediment, looking for organic debris, organic detritus. And this happens today in many parts of the world, and a lot of it's done in freshwater environments. It's being done by arthropods, particularly by animals like beetles. And so the kinds of burrows we see here, which this is the only place in the monument where we see these burrows, were probably formed by beetles or some similar animal. And it's an interesting question why you don't see burrows in most of the red layers in the monument. And I think the answer to that question is simply that you didn't have enough landscape stability. That what was happening was that the floods were coming down, the tides were coming in, and so if an animal wanted to mine into the sediment, it needs a stable landscape for a certain period of time. And you got to remember, these are also air-breathing animals, these beetles and other types of arthropods. So they can't burrow into the sediment and have a tide just show up or a flood just show up, because they'll be drowned or buried, literally. So here, for some reason, in this one spot, there must have been enough landscape stability, enough period of time during which a beetle, say, could burrow into the sediment looking for food, make its home, and not have to fear or not be wiped out by the next flood or the next tide. So this is really a unique trace fossil association or assemblage in the monument, because here we see an actual, what we would call it an infauna, a group of animals living in the sediment, an infauna, rather than what we normally see, which we would call an epifauna. These are the animals that are living, the fauna epi, on top of the sediment. So we see all the walking traces of the arthropods, the beetles, the scorpions, but here we actually see a place where these animals were able to burrow into the sediment and successfully mine it for food.
So we have seen plants, animals, reptiles and amphibians, and we have seen the underwater fossils, and now we see beetles. So how does everything put together give us a better understanding of what the area was like?
Well, see, we're challenged in these rocks to understand what lived here largely from the trace fossil record. Normally, when you go and look at fossils, you look for bones or shells or even body impressions of animals or leaves. And here in the red rocks, most of what we know about the animals, we know from their traces, their burrows, their trails. So here we're seeing further evidence of diversity, of different species living in the monument, and most importantly, we're seeing behavioral diversity. We're actually seeing a different kind of behavior preserved here than we see in all the other red bed track sites.
Great, so now we get to see more than just evidence of them being here, but how they were behaving. So it adds a lot more to our understanding.
Right, and we see that they were mining sediment 280 million years ago, and as I said earlier, you can see similar mining of sediment today by beetles and other kinds of insects. So this behavior, this mining of the sediment, has great antiquity, and here we have direct evidence 280 million years ago of similar mining going on out here on the mud flats that were along the Permian Sea coast.
Another connection from the present and the past.
Absolutely.
Traces of the not so lost world.